हर तरफ फिक्र को दौड़ा के थकाया हमने कोई दीन मुहम्मद सा न पाया हमने.
The World Health Organization estimates that over 1 billion people worldwide are living with some form of disability. For every successful Stephen Hawking or Helen Keller, there are still countless who have yet to overcome the obstacles of access to basic education, healthcare, or even social integration. With 15% of the world facing these challenges, we must take a closer look at what represents disability and how the associated stigma has hindered those living with disability to achieve their fullest potential. What defines disability has constantly changed. Today, we consider disability to mean any physical or mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. Some may be born with a disability, but many have their disability develop over time or even by accident. Unfortunately, even as the idea of disability has evolved, the stigma has remained firmly attached. We have invited Wajiha Malik, a student with a visible disability currently completing her doctorate in pharmacy, and Saima Shah, who has personal experience of living with and caring for special needs. She is a founding member of the Visible Angels Foundation, a support system for those living with disability or special needs. Wajiha shares her view on self-stigma.
Self-stigma arises from public stigma, and a lot of people with physical disabilities are troubled by it. It starts when a person hears some things over and over and they start believing in it and start implying it to themselves. Like, for example, after I lost my eyesight, for quite some time, I struggled with self-stigma, like things like I couldn't go back to school or find work or even do little things independently, because this is what I would hear all the time from people.
It is sad but true that what we don't value or understand, we will often try to mock or ignore. There is widespread evidence that people living with disability are more likely to face bullying or harassment and may not always receive the support they need.
They don't have an outlet sometimes. Sometimes it might be that their family is denying that their child or their grandchild or their niece or nephew has an issue at all. And that is why you will find that they don't come to meetings, they don't come out very much. And then that leads to isolation, which is very unfortunate.
Even though it might result in, sometimes getting favor from the public or government, but it's definitely more challenging when it comes to things like finding work, because, no matter how educated you are or how much experience you are, how skilled you are, it's like your employer just cannot look past your disability. There are more chance of getting bullied or, stared at, or which can be very uncomfortable.
As a society, we clearly have some way to go to better integrate those living with physical disabilities. But what happens when the disability is less obvious or cannot be seen, especially in a child?
It's when people say, oh, your child, he doesn't look autistic. He doesn't look like he has a disability. I said there are invisible disabilities. It can come across as if he is badly behaved, or it can come across as if I'm a bad mother, which is unfortunate on both parts. When you have children with special needs, it can be particularly difficult, especially with a child who has ADHD, because they lack the focus, they lack the concentration, so they don't retain that reminder for as long as you would expect an atypical child to.
UNICEF estimates that globally, at least 93 million children have disabilities, but caution that the number could be significantly higher as the lack of data may well be related to the stigma that still exists in many societies regarding those perceived to be flawed.
You might think, okay, this is very simple, but it can be very hard to teach. So we try to break it down in many steps. So talking to each other, we realize that we're all at different levels.
It's only when we accept that disability is not a fault or curse that we can deal with it effectively. This is why the Holy Quran clearly states, "And we burden not any soul beyond its capacity."
The first thing was coming to terms with my disability, which included a lot of pep talk and, just thinking positive and knowing that who I was and what I was doing before I lost my eyesight, and just understanding that even though I'm not able to see, but I can still do things maybe a little differently, and then talking to my family about it. Because what I've seen is that people, like families who have children with disabilities, they get very overprotective about their children, and which is understandable as long as it's not a hindrance towards their progress or their growth.
So when you acknowledge anything, it becomes real. And that can be a scary step for anybody, but it is the most truthful step. To stay in ignorance does not help anybody.
In order to remove ignorance, we need to think about who we trust and where we go to seek sources of reliable information and help.
Education is the key. Starting educational campaigns that can provide information to the public about disability, and social media and media can bring awareness.
Visible Angels has actively supported its members on social media platforms with useful tips and age-appropriate activities.
We try to encourage them to come out more. So we organize events for them to socialize and to network with other mothers. And it's a safe environment for these mothers to talk.
A study conducted by the World Health Organization in March of 2020 warns that those with disabilities run the risk of being even more marginalized or excluded from a society during the pandemic. We asked Saima what Visible Angels did to help people facing the sudden loss of physical resources as everything shifted online.
So you have to write down exactly everything. And that's what we did. I believe that this has been helpful. Many of the mothers have given us the feedback that this has been very helpful. We had general coloring things, we had puzzles and etc. So we tried to keep the mothers busy. We tried to provide them with activities to keep their children busy. We also provided life skills that the children could learn. Simple life skills like how to sew a button.
We asked our guests to share any final thoughts on what would change society's view on disability.
If you don't do it for yourself, no one else is going to do it for you. So it's definitely crucial to speak up for yourself. It would be nice that if instead of showing people with disability incapable and dependent and useless and dangerous, it would be nice if they could focus more on what a person with disability is capable of doing.
We want to thrive. Knowing that you're supported, knowing that there is always somebody there, brings you out of isolation, brings you out of depression, and it helps you feel like you have a step in the community.
There is no doubt that we need to unite our efforts to bring about real, lasting change. May Allah Almighty enable us to value and utilize the ability in each one of us to achieve progress and integration for all. Ameen.
हर तरफ फिक्र को दौड़ा के थकाया हमने कोई दीने मुहम्मद सा ना पाया